Hi, I'm Jamie, and I am the creator of One World, Your Story, where we bring people together. And right now, we need this more than ever. The murder of George Floyd, the latest of countless Black Americans to be murdered at the hands of police in America, has set off a chain reaction across the United States. People are angry, people are hurt, and rightfully so. We cannot stand by and allow this to continue any longer. It's time to use our voices and bring this conversation out into the open for good. So, join us for this episode of The Floyd Files.
I just think the biggest thing for me right now is to get people to act. Dr. Maya Angelou says, when you know better, you do better. And now we know.
Hello, everyone who is tuning in live or watching us later. My name is Jamie of the One World, Your Story podcast. And I'm always excited, but of course I'm excited this afternoon to be speaking with Dee, the smiling Yogi. I love that response. Do you ever go by Derek, or is it always just Dee?
I do go by Derek. And actually both ways, Derric and also CK. So
why?
Actually, so I'm an actor, and when I joined the union, I dropped the K. So I felt that I could still be artistic and honor the way my parents spelled it.
So, okay,
and then also
that.
Like a little bit of the psychology behind it too. So when you're at auditions, you always want to kind of stand out. And so at the end of auditions, they would ask, if you're at the end, and I was thankfully at the end most of the times, and they'd be filling out the paperwork and measuring you and all that, and they'd go to spell my name, and I'd say Derric, and they go K, and I was like, okay. And it would just kind of stick in with them. So, yeah.
Okay. It's so funny that you say that because so we have One World, Your Story, but the company behind it is called Capsule. It's the company that Harry and I have, and it's CAPSSUL, only because, this is on the record, whatever. Sorry, Harry, I'm saying this out loud. Capsule.com was not available, how it's spelled regular, CAPSULE, but then we found out also that like made up words do better. I think it's because they stand out, like all the things you were saying, but I like that you were still keeping, in a way, the spelling that your parents gave you to pay some respect to that. So, okay, sometimes we go by D, sometimes Derek. Okay, so you are living in Harlem in New York City. Is that where you're born and raised? Where are you from?
I'm actually from Chicago, born and raised in Chicago, the South Side.
Okay.
Very middle class, 2-car family vacations. My siblings and I went to parochial school, a Black
What does that mean? Parochial?
So a Catholic school.
Okay.
And all the students were Black. We celebrated Black History Month like the rest of the country, which as an adult I thought was kind of interesting, considering the student body was all Black. But I grew up in a very different time, where the neighborhoods, there's the African saying that it takes a village to raise a child. And that's very much how our neighborhood was. So we would put on our uniforms. My siblings and I, we'd walk to school. And if we ever got caught up in any sort of shenanigans, by the time we got home, one of the parents from down the street would have called and relayed that information to my mom. And, we're dealing with all of that. So it was just a very different time. Like we really felt like, in hindsight, I felt very safe and cared for by the community.
Okay, safe and cared for by the community. I love that. Like, it takes a village to raise a family, like all of that. Cool that you felt that. And I feel like you hesitated. I have no idea if this is why you hesitated, but I mean, there is a lot of things that people say about Chicago, and safety and lack thereof.
Well, and there is a lot going on in Chicago too, which is why I say it was a very different time because we were actually the school that I went to was in Inglewood, which is now I believe it is the crime capital in terms of mortality um, of the nation, which is very hard. It really hurts on some level because I remember again growing up and feeling very secure and walking to school and not really thinking that anything could really happen. Um, and now we know, and you hear the stories, and you see the footage of random shootings, children going out to the store and not coming back home. Um, yeah, and it's just really sad how different a couple of generations can be and what their experiences are.
Well, what do you think
And Chicago
happened?
is also very segregated too, um, which is something that I didn't realize growing up because my nucleus of folk was we were all brown people um, and in my family education was really important. So for me, as long as I applied myself in school, I knew that I could there was no reason I couldn't do whatever it is I set my mind to. And that was always my father's mindset. And even the high school that I went to it was the second highest rated public school in the city at the time that I went there. It's called Lindblom Technical High School. So it was college prep. You took an exam to get into it, and people came from all over the city to attend this high school, which was predominantly Black. With we had a small Asian population, but it was one of those schools where it was actually okay, it was cool to be smart, so that was encouraged. So for me, all my life, I just sort of felt that if I showed up and I applied myself, that the sky was the limit. It sounds cliche, and so I didn't become aware of people's perceptions of me based on my aesthetic until I went to university. And that was really the first time that I sort of became aware that I'm a brown person in a white world, which is interesting.
Do you
Very
remember
interesting.
what? Okay, yeah,
Well,
I want to dig into that.
yeah. So what I remember was so the university I went to, State University. I went to Northern Illinois University, and it's in DeKalb, Illinois, the birthplace of Cindy Crawford. Um, And I remember my high school, there was probably maybe 15 or 16 from my graduating class that went to that university. So so when I went to the university, I still had a group of folk that I could connect with. But I would be in a lecture hall with hundreds of people and maybe be one of maybe a handful of Black or brown people. And some of the classes, the smaller classes, I remember even being in my English class. It was a smaller class, and maybe 30 of us in the class, and I was the only Black person. So whenever I spoke, it felt like I was speaking for my people. Um, but I never really thought anything of. I never really gave, and to this day, I really don't care what people think of me. I know who I am, and I know how I'm moving through this world. I know the energy that I'm putting out, and I know um, what I what is at my core. And if you are intimidated or threatened or have thoughts about me, and you choose to not try to engage with me to figure out if you are accurate or not, then that's sort of a you thing. And I will just continue to do what I know to do. Um, which is just show up as Derek, and that's all I can do. I can't be anyone else. I've had 53, now 54 years of practice, so I'm kind of cool with Derek.
Did you just have a birthday?
June 19th, Juneteenth is my birthday.
Juneteenth is your
Juneteenth,
birthday.
yes, which
Whoa.
really
Happy
speaks
fucking
in.
birthday.
Thank you.
Wow.
Which really speaks into my free spirit, I guess.
Yeah, wow. Well,
Yeah,
it's interesting. I saw your post. You said happy born day.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
didn't really think, like, it didn't register that it was your birthday. I mean, because that could have a lot of implications on
Mhm.
that particular day.
Yes.
Um,
Well, it was interesting, even though I started saying born day probably hmm, 15 years ago. I had said my birthday was coming up, and I was speaking to the sister, and she, an older woman, and she said, and I said, "Oh, my birthday is in a week or so." She said, "Well, technically, your mother gave birth on June 19th. You were born on that day." And I went, "Oh, okay, I can co-sign on that. Okay, all right. So it's my born day. It's the day that I was born." So,
Actually, that's so true. And it's really interesting when we're having a conversation about race and racism because language is so effing important when we're talking about that, especially in the United States when we're a very
yes.
politically correct society. And
Hmm.
I mean, words create reality,
Well,
literally. You
yes.
know, this is a hat. You're black because we say you're black. You're white because we say you're white, not because of anything else, really. So I say, yeah, it's your birthday. No, but it is your born day. You're right. You didn't give birth, you were
Yeah.
born.
Was born. Yes. So I've been running with that ever since.
I
Yeah.
love that. And by the way, speaking of language, you've mentioned brown, you mentioned black. Does it matter? Is it important, the language that people use?
Um.
Do you resonate with one more than the other?
Well. I consider myself black in that I am an African American. Brown encompasses for me people that have melanin, but their roots are not necessarily. Although okay, so the first man woman, first person, comes from Africa. But in terms of that lineage and being a part of the slave trade and that bringing you over here, that's why I say black. I'm cool with that. But I embrace everyone. I my son is my son is biracial. His mother's Portuguese and Spanish, and being raised in Germany. Well, he's grown now. He's 24. Um, and it's
What a
very
combo. Wow.
yes, it's very interesting.
Like,
He's
what
actually
languages
very
does he speak?
well. Here we go. So his native tongue is German, and he speaks English fluently. And he has an ear for Portuguese because his mother speaks Portuguese with her mother. But he's not. She hasn't gifted him with that language, unfortunately. So and he studied French a little bit when he was in school, but as he put it, school was never really his thing. So language, he speaks two languages because he grew up that way. But he, for me, it was very important as we speak about language and words and all that, because I believe in the energy of words and I believe in how powerful words can be. And so for me and my interactions with my son, I've always, and I said to myself before he was even born, that I would never say anything to him that would make him feel in any way, shape, or form less than the blessing that he is. Every interaction I have with him, I conversations end with "I love you," even if it's been a tense conversation, especially when he was in those teen years and he was acting out. Um, and every time I talk to him, every time I see him, I smile. I light up when I see him because not only is it because he's my son, he's my favorite person on the planet, but also because I see him. I see how amazing he
His
is,
light,
how spirit is, how compassionate he is, and I see him trying to figure things out.
the
Uh,
blessing that he is.
the blessing that he is. And if we were to go, well, okay, we'll talk about this too. So I have two older brothers and a younger sister, and my father, my experience of my father was that well, he was definitely old school. So for him, the way he showed his family that he loved us was by taking care of us. And like I said, we went to parochial school, we went on our vacations, my mom had a car, yeah, all of these things. Um, but I never heard him say, I love you to me until I was 21. And so for my son, I never wanted him to question. I never wanted him to wonder um, where he fits in my world and how he fits in my heart, and if he is loved or tolerated. And at times I felt like I was an expenditure, like, oh my gosh, because I was a Boy Scout and I took piano lessons and those things that cost my father money. Um, so I never want my son to feel like that. So I make a point of it every conversation. I love him. And now I tell him I'm proud of him and I see what he's trying to do. And so I am so sensitive to words. And even when I'm teaching, I definitely use language that encourages people to accept, embrace, and welcome what's to come and get out of the head and that need to make things be perfect, because it's not about being perfect, it's about being present, right? We are not in none of us who's perfect, right? And so my life on the mat is a reflection of me in the world, right? I am trying to figure things out. I am conscious of the steps that I take and the energy that I'm putting out in the world, and that has been heightened by my commitment to my time on the mat. So if I come to the mat and I am angry because this shape didn't happen, or the language that I'm using is not encouraging, it's deflating my existence somehow, then that needs to get addressed. Because again, just like my son is a blessing, I'm a blessing. And we're all blessings. We're all capable of being blessings to others, especially when we embrace our uniqueness and we choose to show up and share from that place. So we can get on that mat, and I tell people to become their biggest cheerleaders. I'm saying this because I'm sitting on a mat, that's why I keep looking down. And if we can become our biggest cheerleaders, then that goes with us out into the world, and we might find that the steps we take have a little more lift, and that the chest might pump a little bit more, not in a boastful way, but in a way that acknowledges how amazing I am and how amazing this moment is and how glorious this day is and everything that goes along with it.
Oh my God. I like already wanted to take your class before this. In fact, I looked at your schedule today and I'm like, I think it's 4 p.m.
4
No.
p.m.
Yeah, 4 p.m.
Mhm.
Which we'll see. But anyway, so now I'm like, wow, I really want to take one of your classes because I'm already getting inspired. And that was 2 minutes of you talking. So, okay, you're saying words are so important. What does it say on your shirt, by the way? What
Oh,
words do we have? More
more
life. I love it. Yeah, of course.
life.
And
Yes.
I love what you said also about not being perfect and being present in the moment. We didn't do our 5 minute or it doesn't even have to be 5 minutes, however you want to do it,
We
of
can close
setting
with
the
a
tone.
meditation too.
Okay,
We
I
can
was gonna
close with
say we could
a
do it.
yeah.
We could do it now if you
You want
want.
to do it
Like,
now? We can do it
yeah,
now.
like get
I,
into
I
it.
thought we
Okay,
were. I thought we were on a roll, so I was just like, "Hey, we can keep rolling, but we
we'll
can
get
also."
right back into it. I promise. I got
Okay,
you.
I'm sure. I'm sure we can always stop and breathe because that's important. All right, let's do it.
Okay, so we were going to start this way, but we're going to get into it right now. For anybody that is watching, please join us. I don't even know what we're going to do. We're either going to do some sort of breath work or meditation, something to get us in the mindset of really, because after this, D, like, let's really dig in.
Okay,
So yeah, take us away.
here we go. Let's find a comfortable seat, whatever that means to you. Close your eyes. Sit up nice and tall. Open your hearts. Bring your awareness to the breath. Allow more weight to settle down into the points of the body that are in contact with the physical world. Maybe you can sit up a little bit taller, directing energy out through the crown of head up into the spiritual world. Just allow the breath to do what it naturally does. Not manipulating your breathing pattern, just noticing how the chest rises and falls with each cycle of breath. how the tummy expands and contracts with each cycle of breath. Welcome in the silence. Try to quiet your mind. And allow whatever emotions arise to be fully realized. So we find ourselves in a time of great flux, turmoil. Use the breath to ground yourselves. Use the breath to anchor yourselves. In that sea of confusion, the storm that we find ourselves ensconced in, try to find your truths. The foundation you stand on. And as it pertains to the movement for civil rights that we are in the midst of, a battle that is long overdue, we get to acknowledge what has brought us here. We get to acknowledge the ramifications of slavery. And all the other injustices that resulted from that. And we get to feel angry, frustrated, disappointed, hurt. But channel that rage if you're feeling rage, channel that hurt if you're feeling hurt to action. Choosing to take steps to bring about justice, to bring about reform, equality. Moving from this heart space, from a place of love, place of compassion, place of equanimity. As you inhale, breathe into the world you want to live in. And as you exhale, breathe away any fear of that coming to be. Inhale, breathe into the world you want to lead for your children, your nephews, your nieces, your neighbors' children. Exhale, let go of any doubt of that coming to fruition. Inhale into the world that knows peace, knows love, that knows compassion for all. And as you exhale, choose to do something about it. We are more powerful than we allow ourselves to believe we are. We can do better. We can do more. We must do more. Bring the hands in front of the heart, thumbs press into your heart space. Deep breath in. Exhale, let it go. And flutter open your eyes. Hands can find your knees or whatever feels appropriate for you. Maybe you wiggle your fingers, gently shake your head out, yes and no.
Oh, you're amazing.
You're amazing.
I'm like, okay, I'll probably be there at 2:00. Make it work. Or 4:00, 2:00 for me, 4:00 for you.
Yes.
Okay, wow. I love that. First of all, yeah, you're right. We have infinite capabilities within us. Like, are we tapping into it? I don't know. My father always said to me, brains are a dime a dozen. Show me someone who does something with them.
Mm.
Take action, right? It's not just about knowing it, it's about doing something with it. You have just this, like, I mean, indeed, the smiling yogi, that smile, it really like brings this energy, this like of love and calmness and the words that you chose to use during that breath work. Wow. Where did this all come from? How did this start? I mean, especially growing up in Chicago, now you're in Harlem. You live in
Yes.
cities that have a ton of violence in them. Like,
Mhm.
there's a lot going on around your world, a lot of hate, for lack
Mhm.
of better words.
Right.
How did you
Um,
come to be this light and loving being?
so I attribute a lot of it. I must. Uh, I, I guess it starts with my mom, and yeah, I guess it's sort of this. My sister and I are the youngest, and my mother passed away when I was a sophomore in university. She died of breast cancer, and that wrecked me. To put it, it wrecked me. It wrecked me. It shook my foundation, and that's the first time I can honestly pinpoint not feeling safe. So my world shifted then,
Mm,
and then
I'm
it
so
was.
sorry that
Well, thank you.
happened.
Yeah, but so the flip side of it is that I got to deal with that at an earlier age than many people, and
Talk about an interesting choice of words. You said, I got to deal with that,
yeah,
which I think is super interesting because so many people are like, oh, all this stuff is happening to me. No, I think life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. Just like
yes,
you said, I
right,
got to experience that at a young age. Whoa,
right,
that's powerful. Okay, keep going.
yes.
Sorry.
And and it took me a while to get to the point where I could speak freely about my mom because there was so much hurt, there was so much pain. And again, like I said, this fear, like now I didn't even know where I fit in my family anymore because my mother was my glue and my mother and I were really close. So I remember a number of things. So like I said, my mother, she died of breast cancer. And after she had a mastectomy when I was in high school. And I just remember her road to recovery and her faith being being next level. I remember her doing. She would put on her gospel music on whenever she did her exercises. So when they removed her breast, she lost, like they cut muscles and all this and all this. So she didn't have her range of motion. She couldn't use her arm, but she had exercises that she did religiously. She had that music on, and I remember some mornings coming into the living room and she'd be doing her exercises and sweat like dripping off her nose, but her never losing faith. And that just
Ooh, I have chills.
that impacted me. And it's one of those things, like, you know, there are moments that that may seem to have been just sort of a random event, but then it comes back at some point in time, and it's watered, or you're watering it. And in this instance, as I was watering those memories of her with my tears, it sprouted this this plant that chooses to live a certain way. I choose to live in a way that allows the love that she poured into me be shared with others. So I'm not hoarding it. It's not that love is that well that she tapped into, the same well that I tapped into, the same well that all of us tapped into, is boundless. So I just choose to send love. That's my mission. And one of the challenges, especially during the whole the Black Lives Matters movement, but actually more after George Floyd's death, the challenge was to be honest about things. Because part of the reason we are in this mess now is because it was easier for people to not acknowledge the pain, the injustice, the hurt that fellow Americans were experiencing. So on one level, it's frustrating when, and I'll speak in terms of black and white because it is a black and white issue. Although I speak to people's energy, so I don't like, if you look at my pool of friends, and someone will say, oh, you know, when they're describing someone, they'll say, oh, you know, the older lady that wears the glasses. Okay, I get it. When you said the glasses, but if you say like the white lady, but when you get into what someone is wearing, then it helps a little bit more because I'm not seeing all of that, right? Anyway, but it is a black and white issue because I'm also a realist. I know where I live. I know the rules in this country. And to see,
Ooh, that's an interesting way of putting it, D.
well, yeah,
I know why you said it, but
yeah. And so to see someone's life be snuffed out in such a callous way, and to have that person void of any sort of connection to the action hurt in it hurt in such a way, because I could have been George Floyd. My son could be George Floyd. People that I see walking, my neighbors' children, you know, it's just, and I think back to Barack Obama's his speech after the children, those babies were murdered in Connecticut, and he said, you know, that we need to see those children as our children. We need to feel similar to the quote from Ben Franklin that says, what is the quote? It's about injustice. Says that justice will not be served until those that are unaffected are as outraged by those who are affected by it. Right. So now, as I'm speaking in black and white, right? Black and white people are my white brothers and sisters, and every other shade. We all need to get on this bandwagon. We all need to get on board, and we need to realize that it was a life that was taken. And there have been many lives that have been taken that go undocumented, that don't get airtime. And to see that and to know that that happens, and it has been happening, and to on some level feel that, is this going to be any different, or to doubt that the outcome will be different, was a struggle for me, because I know who I am in my core and in my being, and I know who I am and what my mission is. And it is to be a part of the healing process. My mission is to encourage people to show up. My mission is to encourage as many people to smile as possible. My mission is to send compassion and to welcome love and to give love. All of that was being challenged because in the face of all of that, and I'm still opening myself up to conversations with people about it, and I'm talking as raw as the conversations need to be, which at this point they need to be very raw. So things aren't filtered, which is why I'm saying black and white. And having conversations with people that don't look like me, but I could feel that they're hurt. And that they're confused and they want to know what to do. And then I'm holding that space and and making sure that, again, because language is important to me, that I use words that encourage them to take the next step, to not give up, to not feel defeated or overwhelmed by these circumstances that feel unsurmountable. But I had to take a step back. I remember we did the blackout. It was a Tuesday blackout on social media. And I remember there was something about when I blacked out my screen and I started to scroll through and I saw all these black dots and just kept going and 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 going. It did something to me. Because I know that there are a lot of people that are feeling the same pain that I'm feeling. And somehow it was more tangible. And I just took a step back. So I did the things that I had to do. I continued to teach, and I continued to have conversations with people afterwards. But anything beyond that, my time on social media was minimal, just to like answer any questions that students may have had for me. I wasn't on my phone. I had to stop watching everything about George Floyd and seeing those images. And it took me about 3 days to process. And that's what I needed to do. I really needed to process. I needed to feel all of my feelings. And I needed to channel them and recommit to my mission statement. So when I showed up again, I was bigger, badder, bolder, and even more fierce in my assertions. And that's one of the reasons I started my own Zoom classes, because I had allowed myself, if we speak about our power, our strength or whatever, I had allowed myself to not offer my own classes because I have teachers that I study with and I think they're amazing. But then I have students that tell me I'm amazing. Yeah, but, and there's that little voice in there that just kind of wanted to downplay things. I was like, no. Mm-mm. And more important than that, I just need to create as many spaces, I need to create space for people to come and feel their feelings and move through their feelings.
And spaces where you get to shine your light
Exactly.
on them for those feelings. Okay, I'm sorry to stop. I'm like, oh, I want you to keep going, but you said so many things that we got to dig into. First of all, I'm sorry about your mother. She sounds amazing. I could just picture her sitting there with the gospel music, working out, just getting it.
Yes.
And how inspiring that is through all that she was going through. And I love that you are spreading the love of your mom on. I mean, that is so beautiful. Okay. I'm like, ooh, where do we dig in first? So you had to recharge, process what was going on because your mission is, okay, a lot of words we could use. I'm just going to call you a beacon of love and light and smiles.
Thank you.
Which there's a lot in there. But to say that there was no anger during this time period or anything like that, that you wouldn't have these feelings to work through, you'd be kidding yourself. Anybody
Exactly.
would.
Right.
So, okay, you worked through that, but well, actually, that's not the route that I want to go down. I want to go down the yoga route. And how do you work through spreading love and light in a world, okay, we're talking about the rules of the US, the rules of yoga, and thinking about like athleisure wear and like who shows up to yoga classes, who talks about yoga classes. I saw somebody post, I have a lot of friends in the Burning Man community, and somebody had posted, one of the only things that they had posted was spiritual work is anti-racist work. It's like, okay. I got a lot of feelings about it.
Mhm.
Yoga, I mean, how do you feel showing up in that community today? And does it feel different than it did, let's say 5 months ago or 5 years ago?
Um, yes and no. Um,
Okay.
so
There's I'm like, oh, what are the layers
so
there? Let's dig in.
the no in that my teaching style hasn't changed per se. Yes, in that um, definitely we are having conversations. We're having very candid conversations, and I'm more committed. I guess maybe even more fierce in um, what it is that I'm hoping people glean from any class that they take with me.
Bigger, badder, bolder, like you were saying.
Right. And
Okay,
it's
when
interesting
you
because
say
I
we,
also,
sorry, Dee,
yeah,
but when you
go ahead.
say we in the context of this conversation, we
Mhm.
are having more, who are you referring to? And just let's get really specific.
Right. So when I say we, I'm referring to me and my students, and we're going to get even more specific. The majority of my students are not Black. It's rare that I'll have more than, well, it depends on where. Well, nowadays I'm teaching online, so that's another thing. But it's rare that in a studio setting, when I would actually walk into a studio, that I would have more than maybe 2 or 3 Black folk in the studio. So um, there is that dynamic, but also because I love Derek. I am so in love with me, right? So when I step into the space and I'm holding the space, I'm just showing up as me. And again, if you have issues with that, and maybe people do have issues with that, I don't know, because that's not my concern. My mission is, and I've already stated, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to offer, and you can either receive it or not. I am there to facilitate.
Amen.
Descachar said that the most important student is the one that's in front of you. I say that before every class. So when I am walking around and I have permission to maybe give a student an assist, then I am trying to assist them in finding their whatever shape it is, Virabhadrasana 1, 2, 3, headstand, forms, and whatever the Pinchamayurasana, whatever it is that they are working towards, I am there to facilitate. And it's not about me, it's not about my ego, and I'm not telling you what you have to do. I'm encouraging you to listen to that voice that might allow you to take that next step today. So on top of that, yes, and there is this energy that this undercurrent of energy has definitely changed. There is at times, and I think people have gotten a little more settled, and that hopefully that's not the right word, but people are breathing into where we are right now, and like I'm saying, not settled because settled can often lead to complacency, and then complacency leads to non-activity, and we need to stay active. We need to remain vigilant. So um, I've been, one of the things I said when I'm showing up bigger, badder, bolder, is I'm welcoming more conversations, which is why we're having this conversation. I've had 2 other conversations since the whole George Floyd, or after my 3 days of rebooting. So I'm welcoming these conversations because I know that that's the only way we're going to move forward. So, and it's not about, creating a space for white tears and for people to go, oh my gosh, I can't believe we did that. My ancestors. It's like, You can feel that way.
White fragility.
But not right now. Not or have the tears at home, but then use those tears to do something. Right?
Amen.
So you go and vote. Make sure you take someone to the poll with you. Maybe you have time to go and get involved in some of the rallies or some of the protests, or some of the marches. Maybe you don't. Maybe you can write a check to the NAACP legal fund, to Black Lives Matter, to the Color of Change. You know, there are all these ways that you can be a part of the movement. And that's what I'm encouraging people to do. So it is different because, of course, there is a certain level of white supremacy that is present in the yoga community. I mean, you look at the images that you see on television for the most part, it's oftentimes, you know, like a white woman, slim, maybe athletic, and she's probably wearing like a Lululemon or something that, right? All of that. That's not the point. And if you can't, you know, this is also the thing that I have to check myself on, is that great if that's how you want to show up in the studio, but let what's happening here shine brighter than your new outfit.
Well, okay. Let's dig into yoga and white supremacy a little bit. I mean, why did yoga all of a sudden get so big in the US and the Western world?
It became a trend, if you want to look at it that way. Because I don't see it a trend. It's definitely it's my lifestyle now.
Yeah,
But
and how many years have you been practicing for?
I started practicing right after 9/11. Actually, literally. So this is a little tidbit, because I am an actor. I had just gotten back from Germany. I was visiting my son. I got back on the 10th of September, and at I think it was 6:30, 7 a.m., 6:30, something like that. On the 11th, I got on a train for Baltimore, Maryland. I was working on a show. Our first day of rehearsals was 9/11. So I was clueless to what was happening in New York. I got to Baltimore. They picked me up and they were driving me to my apartment. And it was on the radio, but I didn't hear that because I was like, oh, this is Baltimore.
Holy
Okay.
shit, what timing. You
Yeah.
skipped out on that, like.
And what's really interesting, I had actually initially booked my flight to return on the 11th because I thought rehearsal started on the 12th. So had that happened, then I wouldn't have been able to get in the country and blah, 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 blah. So
all happens as it's supposed to. Holy
it
shit.
all happens as it's supposed to. So my yoga big, she's now my yoga big sister. Her name is Allison Kramer. I love her dearly. She's a senior teacher at Laughing Lotus. She was, she had been out in California, in LA, and had gotten some, and she's been into yoga for quite some time. She's also a former dancer. I'm a former dancer. And she had these audio cassettes. And she said, you know, Dee, you know, I'm into yoga. You want to do it sometime? I was like, yeah, okay, I'll do it. So, yeah, let's go. So we went over to the studio, and she put on the cassettes, and it was power yoga. It turned out that later on, I found out that the voice on there was Brian Kest. So he is my first yoga voice.
Whoa, so, what are the odds? That's so cool.
So I got into it because of the physical challenge. And then as I was doing it more and more, I was listening to some of the other things that he was saying. I was like, oh, it's more than just that. It's more than just challenging myself. It's how I challenge myself. It's the energy behind, for me now, every moment. And every moment on the mat, every moment in my pedestrian walk as well. So, Allison was the associate choreographer on the show. So when the show opened, she left. But my opening night gift from her was a copy of 3 of the cassettes that we had used and my very first yoga mat. And I would do yoga on again, off again. And then like somewhere around 2007, I realized that it was more than just for me, my practice was. And I started experimenting with different training programs, and I tried this and I didn't like that and I didn't fit there. And eventually, the end of 2008, I completed my 200-hour certification, and I started teaching right after that, like subbing wherever I could, and and I've not looked back.
So, okay, it's been like 20 years, more or less.
We're close
19.
to, yeah. Oh wow, yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
maybe we shouldn't have said that out loud. Okay, it's been a chunk of time. It's been a chunk of
It's
time.
been a chunk of time. Yes,
And it's been a chunk of time that is longer than I would say the chunk of time that it's been trendy.
right. Yeah.
So you've seen
So
definitely a change maybe happen in yoga. I mean, I want to talk
yes.
about the whiteness of it. Like, how did that happen? Because it's not
Mm,
something that
Well,
was.
but so this is the thing, right? As studios start to pop up, and then you start to attach um, what might not be accessible to all fees to the yoga practice, then it starts to become more exclusive, and it starts to
You're
become more
right.
of a thing. So one of the studios I practice at, and
Damn, sorry. Now that you're saying that, I'm thinking about like skiing and snowboarding and golf. Like, they're expensive
they're expensive, yes,
and they're white,
and they're yes,
super white. I
but
mean, not completely, but you know what I'm saying.
no, I
Whoa,
understand, right? And
that's
you
so.
go to a
And 20
basketball
bucks a
court,
class. Yeah,
yeah,
all you need is the fucking one ball.
yeah, and
That's
a hoop,
it.
and sometimes you don't even have the hoop, right?
Right.
Sometimes you just kind of you're shooting and you're hitting the backboard. You just
Same with soccer too,
yeah,
or
exactly,
football. Like,
yeah.
you don't need much.
Don't need much. So that
Damn.
definitely ties into it, and even sometimes in the studios there is that too. People come in the studio and they want to put their mat in a certain spot, even if there's already a mat there, but because well, I paid my $25, my whatever it is, and I have on my new outfit, and this is the spot that I want. But I'm sorry, if someone else is there, you need to go somewhere else. And for me, I've not really been challenged when I encourage people to not do what they're doing in terms of trying to just take over someone's space. I do say to the community, though, if someone's coming in and they're carrying a mat and your mat is down, make room, right? We're all here. We're all here to get our practice in, right? It starts here. We're a community, right? We're all somewhere in our journey. Yay. But welcome that person in, right? And it's something as simple as moving your mat over a few inches one direction or the other allows that person access to the sangha, to the family. So, that's a huge part of it. And the thing is, yoga comes from India, and there are a number of ways of looking at that because the origins of it were actually a little more elitist, more for a certain class of folk, and you would have the teacher come to the royal kid, your royal highness, the prince or whatever, and then it was also for boys prepubescent, so they were folding into these shapes because they didn't have muscles yet, and I like to say
Interesting.
their testicles hadn't dropped yet. Um, but it's beyond that there as well. And I've not been to India yet, but it is beyond that there. It's like so everyone now, um, that culture has more of at least the Indians that I've met here. There is a genuine there's something there's an appreciation for the simple things a lot of times. There's also a directness that can be a little off-putting. For these kinds of some Indian friends, and they'll say things, and I'll be like, "Wow, you could have said it with a little more tact, I think." But at the end of the day, this is what you're saying, right? And it's like, "Fam, well, why did you do this?" And you're like, "Okay, but now I feel like you're attacking me." But so to get back to it though, just because I'm going on a tangent, and that's what Gemini normally does. Um, I, it is layered. The, the essence of yoga. for me, it has nothing to do with what you're wearing. It really has nothing to do with your asanas too, what the poses, how advanced they are. It has nothing to do with that. Those can change, right? The shapes come and go from day to day. So you might be in handstands one day and the next day you can't even shift your weight far enough to get your shoulders over your wrist. So how are you going to balance? Are you any less amazing? No, right? Because you're showing up. And that's really what it is. So whether I wear t-shirts from the dollar store sometimes. And sometimes students have gifted me things and I'll wear that in class and that might be more expensive. Okay. But I could still be struggling if you want to consider it a struggle to find a shape. It's where I am, it's who I am, it's what I'm breathing into every moment.
I mean, it's the commitment to action. It's what you were talking about otherwise, in life is like, well, how are you going to be part of the movement? How are you
Yes.
going to show up on the mat today? Are you going to
Right.
show up on the mat today?
Mhm.
Basic level.
Which
Um,
is interesting because I'm sorry, I just thought you said this and it reminded me of when I was dancing. And I remember one summer working in Chicago, and then after work, I was on scholarship at this dance studio. And I would go and take 2 classes after having worked my summer job from like 9 to 5. So I would get home at like maybe 11, 12 o'clock at night. And then I get up at 6:30, 7 o'clock so I could, be ready and get to work. And I did that because I was committed to that. And that definitely set me up for, I guess, the physical um, component of the asana work. But what's different, and I love dancing. I still love dancing, but I don't dance professionally because it's a lot of work. And the work is more, it's more extrovert, and it's more about what I can do, how high I can kick my leg, how high I can jump, how many turns I can do. And the asana work, for as fabulous as some of these shapes may look to people, it's just about being in my body in a way that is saying thank you. Thank you for this day. Thank you for this ability to move these joints, to move these muscles, and to shine through all of this. So it's very different, which is one of the reasons why I think the asana practice found me when it did. It helped me channel my passion for movement into something that was even bigger, and that's more profound and life changing for me. The asana practice can be that. It's definitely a vehicle for change.
oh my God, of course it's a vehicle for change, and not just physical change. I think the mental change is what's more powerful about it. That's why it exists to begin with.
Mhm,
And it's okay, how can I focus on those little things that I do every single day, every single moment, and take control in a really different way? Be intentional.
mhm.
Every breath, every movement. How can you be intentional with the actions that you take every day as an American so that you're not perpetuating and living into these systems that are causing massive inequities? How can you show
Exactly.
up and breathe a little bit different? That's
Mhm,
all it is. It's a beautiful metaphor. But somehow we have made it about looking good, about
mhm,
wearing the cutest Lululemon yoga pants, having the mat and a matching water bottle, and about being able to get into whatever pose.
mhm.
And I think that that's what we've made life about too. It's about
Absolutely.
looking good. How much money? How many cars? What
Mhm.
style? Rather than what are the relationships that I'm forming in my life? Right? What impact am I making in the world? How am I showing up? How am I taking every single step, every single action?
Which is one of the reasons why for me, it's very clear that COVID hit when it did. Um, and people have a lot of thoughts about it, but it's a master reset. It was a
The,
universal
the great
reset.
reset, of course.
Yes, because we have gotten or had, and it remains to be seen. Um, we just so disjointed, so obsessed with acquiring things. And again, to your point about the water bottle matching my outfit today, it's the commercialization of the spiritual, right? And that's a part of the wellness thing too. Going to get a massage. Oh my gosh, it has to be at this place. And I need to get, I need to have this scrub and I need to have that and I need to have that. Yeah. if you're taking care of your bodies, right? If you're taking care of these shells that we get to inhabit, why does it have to cost you a fortune to take care of something that allows you to be productive, right? Because everyone works.
Oh,
So
but by the way, if it all was about just working and living and not about looking good or having the next best thing, well, then would it matter if I had all this money, more than you, and owned 10 slaves and you didn't? No. That's, I mean, it all is the same core root of the problem,
absolutely,
right?
yes, absolutely. So we get to reset, right? And I think I
If we
remember.
choose to get uncomfortable and do it.
Okay, right. And so that's actually taking me to my next point. So De Blasio, the mayor here, was speaking into the protest that turned a little more violent, and it turned into, looting and all of that. And he was saying that it was the perfect storm because, people had been cooped up, and people had there's no hope for summer jobs and this that, and the other. And so there's all this teen angst and this that, and the other. And you also found out that it it wasn't just what happened, the looting and all of that was not just from, it was a very calculated movement. Like, people showed up and they had trucks and they had tools, so, but
And
beyond
they
that,
were ready to go.
they were ready to go. Um, for me, it was a perfect storm in terms of this global movement. We had to, to your point about get uncomfortable. So as horrible as that image, the 8 minute and 46 seconds of that knee on George Floyd's neck was, and how that's embedded in my psyche, and I'll never not see it again. We needed that. We needed to feel that uncomfortable. And by us being quarantined, you didn't have the luxury of running, oh, I was running to work, I had to do this, I had to do that. So you saw it on your television. You saw it time and time and time and time and time and time again. And you could not say that you're not aware of what's going on now. For years and years and years and years and years, Black people and brown people have been saying that this kind of shit, pardon my language, has been going on. People have been targeted. There is a bullseye on Black and brown folk, especially men. And we've been saying that. And you saw it with going back to Rodney King, and then somehow that's justified when the man is down and you have 4 people beating him with billy clubs. That's justified. That's not excessive force. I don't get it. I mean, and it goes on and on and on and on and on and on. So it was a perfect storm in that we were forced. People had to see it. The only way to not see it was to not have a television and to not ever turn on your computer. That was the only way you would not, that's the only way you would have escaped those images. And then also, by us having been quarantined for so long, people started to, I'm hoping, they started to appreciate the simple things again. They started to connect with their families again. They started to realize that this moment, me actually being able to have dinner with you, is important and it matters. Me being able to go for a walk, relationship, me connecting to you, me reconnecting to family, to friends, to my neighbors. So that level of compassion started to, it was cultivated again.
Well, I don't even know if it was compassion. You're making me think of, I mean, it's the little privileges and freedoms that we were so used to every day that all of a sudden got taken away from us. So we were more grateful when they did happen. Mm-hmm. Right. Which I think allowed us to be able, and when I say us and we right now, I'm talking about white people, to all of a sudden then also be able to see all the other privileges that we blindly had and never had to think about, that we can, I think, easier be open to seeing now, because life is uncomfortable in a lot of other ways. So it was like, okay, I can see that in a dip, because George Floyd is not the first video that's been shown of this. And unfortunately, Dee, there are plenty of people that still haven't watched it, because you could definitely see the news articles, but you actually had to click play to watch the video. And I hope that people did, because it shook me to my core in ways in which some of the other videos didn't. And I think that I don't want to, what's the term that's going on right now? Not like, it's not like rape culture, but like celebrify, like making videos of murder and death like normalized and
Oh,
popularized should never. I don't want to play into that, but I
right.
do think it's important that you get shaken
Mhm.
in that way. So yeah, I don't know, the Great Reset, I really hope it happens. Like, I think that it's important, but you said something earlier about how, unless it hits our own backyard or it's your own kid or something, we don't show up. I mean, you look at coronavirus, right? With the US didn't show up and give a shit about it until it was already bad in Washington State and New York. And we're
Mhm.
still not necessarily giving a shit about it. Texas and Florida, for example, until it was there. And it is there right now.
Right.
I don't know what that is about humans. Like, I'm not going to care about it unless it's actually in my own backyard. So, will white people ever really care about it in the same way? I
Well,
hope so.
look, I definitely look, if 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 change doesn't happen, if it doesn't result from this movement, then I don't know what else it would take. I mean, there is a
Right,
global
exactly.
movement at this point. You saw someone's life being extinguished. You heard the cries. You saw his colleagues supporting it, which would be the equivalent of, at this point, white people choosing to turn a blind eye to it. You are now implicit in
Yeah.
promoting racist acts, and in inequities.
Complicity.
You are totally, you're on that bandwagon if you're not on the other side. I'm sorry, it's that simple at this
Yep.
point.
I
It's
agree.
that simple.
I
So,
agree.
I've tried to have conversations with people that support the orange person, and because my thing is, we live in a democracy, so I respect your right to vote for whoever you vote for. But what you're not going to do is tell me that there's a compassionate bone in his body. You're not going to tell me that he's not a racist. And you're not going to tell me he's not fear mongering. You're not going to tell me that.
And you're not going to tell me that you're not being complicit with all of it by voting for him. Come on.
You can't do that. So and I've tried to have conversations a number of times, and I'll just like list a few things that I need to know what your opinions are on, and how, and blah blah blah, and invariably it turns into well, Obama did this. Well, okay, Obama was amazing, but he's not the president, right? So that's not the
Like,
conversation
come
right now.
back, Barry. Damn it.
That's not the conversation. We're talking about what's going on right now. Let's be in the now, right? Because we're in this mess right now. So I just need to know, how can you support this? How do you support that? Has he ever said anything about Black Lives Matter? Will you ever hear him say Black Lives Matter?
No, but he will retweet a video of people saying white power. I think one thing that's really important that you're saying is, when you are having these conversations, is, by the way, really, really, really important that we are having these conversations.
Absolutely.
With people of varying backgrounds. And I mean conversations, not
Mhm.
arguments. Truly meant to just hear where each other is coming from. My theory is this: I don't give a shit what you did up until June 28th, 2020. We all made mistakes. We all didn't know. What are you doing today? So if you voted for him back, I don't care. What are your thoughts today? What's the conversation today? And I think that, okay, let's talk about that, and let's just give everybody a fair chance, because the veil is being unlifted over and over again. Okay, Dee, I'm like, shit, this always happens. There's so many things I want to talk about, but I want to give you time to prepare for your class that's happening in 45 minutes.
Oh my gosh, it's time already. Okay. All right.
And I want to wrap up. So, by the way, if people are listening right now live, can they join your class in 45 minutes if they want to? And how would they do it?
They would have to go to, well, first off, my Insta handle, I'm sure that's already been stated.
Harry's listening, so he can put it in here for us, Harry.
The Smiling Yogi, that's my Insta handle. And on Facebook, I'm Derek Harris, although people aren't really doing Facebook anymore, but it's Derek without the K, Harris. My endeavor, like this year, is to get 10,000 followers. I'm at like 1,700, but there was a time when I only had 5. So, progress, right? Progress,
Hell
progress,
yeah.
progress. So, because yeah, I want to be an influencer, like sending more smiles out into the world.
I
But
want you to influence that too. Yes.
so to the class I'm teaching today at 4 o'clock is through Stacked Yoga. If you go to Stacked, STACKED yoga.com, you can sign up for that class. I also teach a couple of my own Zoom classes. Tuesday at 5:30 is a strength stretch flow class. Just go to my social media and the link is there. And then on Saturdays at noon, I teach a power flow class.
Amazing.
And then like my whole schedule is posted in the open classes that I teach. Yeah, it'll be lovely to see you all of you, again, either in class or maybe in another conversation.
Maybe. Hey, we never know. Okay, so at D the Smiling Yogi, wow, I botched that. On Instagram, Harry posted it. So if you ever want to find out D's schedule, that's the best way to do it, or join his classes. Now, I would just want to give you an opportunity, D. You spread a lot of smiles. We did our little breath work. I'm happy to end it. And that's a selfish thing because that was just so amazing. And thank
Okay.
you. So I think we should end maybe just with like a minute of that. But before we do, is there anything else that you want to say on the record while we have the podcast going today, as of June 29th, 2020, about spreading smiles, spreading love, spreading joy, racism, actions we should or could take? Anything else you want to say? Now's your time.
I just think the biggest thing for me right now is to get people to act. Dr. Maya Angelou says, when you know better, you do better. And now we know. Now we know.
Amen.
And then the choice is yours to either do or not. And you get to decide, if you can sleep with knowing that you haven't done enough to create a world that is that embraces all and supports all and welcomes all and encourages all to be as amazing as they're called to be, then that's on you. For me, that doesn't sit well with me. And not just because I am that target group, so to speak, right now, but because I've always felt that way. I've always felt that, and I teach it, that we all get to celebrate our uniqueness. We get to celebrate the steps, the events that have brought us to this moment. And they are to be celebrated. The moments where you were at your best, you want to say that, and the moments that really challenged you, the moments where you shed tears, the moment when you smiled uncontrollably, all get to celebrate it because that's a part of your masterpiece. So just show up and share that.
Show up and share the perfect blessing that you are. Because, by the way, the action, what we have to bring to the table, looks different for every person. But
Absolutely.
just do it, whatever that looks like. So, on that note, give me a little bit more of your gift.
All right, here you go.
And let's wrap it up, Dee.
So bring the hands again to heart center. Thumbs pressing into the heart space, eyes again closed. And breathe into the now. Breathe into action. Breathe into the world we want to live in, the legacy we want to leave for our children and their children's children. Listen to that faint voice of guidance, divine instruction, telling you, reminding you how amazing you are, encouraging you to show up, to take the next step, and the step after that, until there is equality, justice. For all. Breathe into your strength. Choose to make a difference. Know that you matter. Black lives matter. Deep breath in. The light in me bows to the light in you. Namaste. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, D.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the One World, Your Story podcast. If you enjoyed hearing this story and you wish to hear more, make sure you subscribe to us on iTunes and YouTube, and of course, follow us on Instagram at One World, Your Story. From all of us here at the One World, Your Story podcast, we are sending you so much joy and love. Have a wonderful rest of your day.